I'll admit it, I was wrong about the Canon R5C. I actually made a few videos about this camera way before it was even released back in 2022. I've been using the Canon R5 for 2 years at that point, and there were definitely some major limitations to that camera that made it less than ideal in certain situations. And the R5C was supposed to fix those issues, and instead, it ended up bringing even more into focus for most people. Number one, obviously being the horrendous battery life. Now, depending on the exact type of battery, we're talking less than half an hour of runtime during release, which really hadn't been seen out of a Canon camera before. They're usually known for their ease of use, reliability, and their battery life. And to a lot of people, the R5C was just none of those things for a long time. And you combine that with no IBIS, which to most people, that was their biggest issue, me included. The R5 didn't have the best image stabilization on the market by any means, but it was definitely a huge feature that was long overdue on Canon cameras. And I mean long overdue. The photo to video mode on this switching, it takes about 8 seconds compared to almost instantly on other cameras. And it also uses the Canon C70 autofocus, which we're using now, which honestly it isn't great compared to the rest of the Canon lineup. And so this camera just always seemed like it had more limitations than it did features. And overall, I think because nothing like this had ever been done before on the market, like putting a full cinema menu into a hybrid photo video camera, it was kind of a brand new idea to most people. And I think because of that, it was a little confusing. We were trying to understand, who is this camera released for? Was it really that big of an improvement over the already 2-year-old R5? And I think most of us were pretty disappointed at first. That being said, a year went by, and the amount of sit-down interview style work that I was doing, it just kept increasing. And while I already had the Canon C70 and was using the R5 as a B cam, it always just felt extremely limiting. Whether it was the overheating, the limited recording options, the subpar dynamic range, and the really noisy, gross looking shadows when filming in log. There was this project where I hit the 30-minute record limit and I didn't restart it for a good 2 to 3 minutes, and I lost all of that second angle during a fairly high profile interview. And it just really felt like I was doing my business a disservice and holding it back with these major limitations. So I immediately went out the next day and bought the R5C just to finish up with that project. And right off the bat, it's got the same wide DR picture profile as the C70 that I love, but the image is just insanely sharper. It's by far the sharpest camera that I've ever used. And that's because even in 4K, it's downsampling from the 8K sensor. So you're taking away the 30-minute record limits, giving it a fan to prevent overheating, the same cinema menu and features as the $5,500 C70 with a smaller form factor, a sharper image, and most of all, it's got the same photography features as the R5. Now, the only drawback is you needed some external power if you're filming for more than a few minutes at a time. And I personally always preferred to run directly off of the wall power for interviews, but for running gun situations, it was just totally unusable. And now 8 months go by after that. I'm only using it a few times a month, really just specialty situations where I need a B cam that I know that I can run off of the wall. I keep using the R5 as my gimbal camera. And then one day I just decided to buy a small rig V-mount battery and give it a shot. And that was about $250. Mounted it on the gimbal. You've got the cord running into the USB port. Super inconvenient for a lot of situations where you're trying to keep a smaller setup, at events and things like that. It was a lot heavier, but I gotta be honest, I immediately fell in love with the thing. Having the much more intuitive and easy to use cinema menu with all the extra features, it really just felt like I was trading in an old clunky car for a Porsche. And I mean, it was just a day and night difference. The image was unbelievably sharper. The dynamic range was multiple stops better. And it also has a dual native ISO, so it was multiple stops better in low light. I mean, it was just such a massive improvement from the R5, which I used and loved for years and I still use. Honestly, I was shocked how much I ended up loving the camera with how little I used it for the first 9 months of owning it. So for almost all of last year, I use this exclusively as my gimbal camera on a day-to-day basis, even with the inconvenience of the massive V-mount battery attached. Now, towards the end, I got sick of it for real estate, and I started using the half-hour battery life as a challenge. You know, in my head, I knew, okay, I only have a half an hour, and I use that to speed up my process. If I couldn't get a house done on half an hour of battery, then I was taking too long and I needed to be more efficient. I could get past the less than ideal autofocus. I'm used to the C70. I know it's slower, but it's not a total deal breaker, especially when it is so much better in low light. And then fall of 2024 starts getting close last year. The R5 II announced and the new batteries come out. They're claiming much longer runtime with the R5C, and I'm trying to decide, do I sell the R5 and the R5C in exchange for the R5 II to make everything that much more convenient? And I was right on the verge of doing that, and then I was like, you know what? Let's buy a few of these batteries and see how much better the battery life is. And let me tell you, these are a total game changer. You can now get well over an hour in 4K 60, more than an hour and a half in 4K 24, which is basically what the R5 was to begin with. And not to mention the biggest part of it all, because of the fan, no overheating, which the R5 II still does. You know, it just made things so much easier, and I love the image that was coming out of it. And honestly, it just looked so much cleaner to me, probably better than the C70 in a lot of scenarios. And with now almost a year of exclusively using it, the quality jump has been massive. So because of that, I decided I was wrong about the Canon R5C. This camera is an absolute beast for hybrid work, and I'm going to continue using it throughout 2025. Zero plans to buy the R5 II at this point, and we're going to keep running this setup right here with the R5C for gimbal and video work, and then this as my photography camera. And honestly, I would keep an eye out for any deals. This goes on sale. It's totally worth it in my opinion. If you're new to the channel, my name is Devin. I run a media agency here in New England, and on this channel, we talk about cameras, talk about business, strategy, and real estate media, and I want to help you make more money with your camera. I've been getting paid to create content for 15 years now, and I want to share the things that I've learned that have helped me in my creative journey. So if you found any of this helpful, or if you learned anything, maybe you want to take your creative passion and turn it into a career, hit the link on the screen to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.